enterprise networking needs changing today?
That's a big question. So
It is indeed.
I think when you look at the market as a whole, things have become more dynamic. Whether you look at the user side, where you have users that maybe have 2, 3, 4, 5 devices, or IoT, which is now invading the enterprise workspace, and now you have many more IP addresses than you ever had, it's become more dynamic. And then you look at the application side, and cloud-based applications are being used all over the place. Cloud techniques are being used in the private data center, so that the applications themselves have become more dynamic. Any user with a credit card can swipe and subscribe to an application. On your own phone, it's a quick download. And all of this is happening very quickly across the enterprise, and as a result, it's having implications both on the WAN and on the LAN. Because historically, those environments were fairly static. Like, you kind of set them, and perhaps you didn't go back for 10 or 15 years and touch them. I've had customers show me running configs from a Catalyst 6K that it hasn't rebooted in over a decade, and they're very proud of it. And that's awesome, but that's not the real world today. Today, you're going to have a more dynamic environment. And I think that's where you're seeing the industry move, and Cisco in particular, very aggressively towards intent-based networking, which is a combination of how do we bring automation and analytics to bear to actually allow the environment to become more dynamic, to become more automated, to become more responsive when there is a customer issue, and more proactive. And that's the world we're in now today. And it's hitting different enterprises at different speeds, but it's impacting all of our customers.
So you talked this morning about some of the drivers and the need for SD-WAN.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Why is SD-WAN becoming more important now?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Mitch, and I think whenever you see a customer adopt cloud, one of the things that they do is they immediately start using that application. And so take Microsoft Office 365. It's probably the one most people can relate to. If you think about your own workspace, when you used to use 365, when you used to use Microsoft Office, when you were using PowerPoint, it was all rendered on your desktop locally. You weren't using any WAN bandwidth. You weren't subject to the performance of the WAN. Now, that's actually hosted by Microsoft centrally, and when you want to use 365, you have to connect to it across the WAN. As soon as you do that, your bandwidth needs go up. The performance implications to the user experience become more dramatic, more pronounced, because I'm having to interface with that hosted service in real time. And as a result, I start to actually think about how do I change my WAN topology. I start to bring internet connectivity in addition to MPLS into my WAN connectivity portfolio. And as soon as I do that, the complexity grows. I have to actually manage what we call a new cloud edge, because instead of it being centrally located at a data center, it's now distributed across 1,000 sites, maybe a few hundred, depending on the size of your enterprise. And to deal with that complexity, you need a new approach. You need software-defined networking. You need a SD-WAN, software-defined WAN, to actually deal with that.
So what are the opportunities for telcos and service providers in these markets?
I think they're huge. When I talk to customers, and I talk to them all the time, there's a lot of times where they're flipping between, I'm going to use a managed service, oh no, I'm going to insource it. And if I look at why people switch to an insource model, a lot of times it's because they couldn't get the flexibility from their provider to deal with the changes that they were trying to manifest in their enterprise. And the beauty of something like SD-WAN is now, instead of having to go touch every device by device, and as a managed service provider being very costly for me to implement any changes, now I can do it from a central console, and I can do it globally instantly. And so what that means is, to the enterprise now, I can become much more responsive, much more adaptive, kind of mapped to their business needs. And that's really critical, because what that means for the service provider is now they can provide a much better managed service, and they'll have less churn. And I think for the enterprises, they're very happy to use managed services. They'd love to use it if the SP or if the partner can provide that. I think also for partners, in addition to the classical kind of service providers, there's also a managed services opportunity that's very real with SD-WAN, because now it's not just about one carrier providing a single circuit. It's actually about a mashup of different providers that have to come together. And sometimes that's going to be a classical SP who provides that, or it's going to be an actual partner who provides that.
Great. Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Mitch.
Thank you.